Hey yo, how's it going everyone? Entropy here today with another video. Today, if you haven't seen the title or the thumbnail or the visual cues to your left or in the middle, we are obviously doing a video on Murakumo. So this is going to be my list. If you want some insights before I came to this list, this conclusive list for my testing, go check out that stream. It's a bit laggy at times, but it does go through my thought process, how I tweak things. And I think it's definitely worth watching if you are interested in that. But if you're just interested in the final list, that this is all you probably need, and let's just go over it. So for this deck, it's a Magatsu Storm deck. This is probably the one streamlined build that you will see. This is not a budget build because you will need 8 triple rares, but there are budget builds, and I think that for this primary build, you will want to play the Magatsu chain. So the Magatsu is basically the grade 0 on ride. When you ride the grade 1, you get to check top 7. For the grade 2 or the grade 3, add it to your hand. And if you didn't find anything, call it out. If you didn't ride the right grade 1, you call it out. Pretty good starter. The grade 1 lineup, we're playing 4 PGs. This is the only PG that we have, so this is something to consider when you're playing against Murakumo, or when you're playing this clan itself. You do want your limit break at times, but you know, you're not a break ride deck, so you're not that reliant on being on 4, but your opponent probably might be. So if you're playing, you know, aggressively or defensively, it is something to consider when you consider the PG of choice, essentially. Next up, we have 4 Magatsu Breath. This is the grade 1 of the Magatsu line. When the grade 2 rides on top of it, you get to call 2 KAGE BUNSHIN's shadow clones of the grade 2. Call it out, and those grade 2s get boost. At the end of the turn, one of them goes to your hand and one of them goes out of the game. So even if you don't end up attacking with it, you'll still +1 because you add a grade 2 in your hand. And no matter what, it means that you gain, you know, 9k boosters, 18k offensive option if you do want to do that. And it's just overall really great. Next, we're playing 3 8Ks. 8Ks help you hit numbers, and 8K is a vanilla. And 2 Oboro cards. Now, Oboro card, you know, I hope everyone has already picked up their copy. And this card skill is when placed, Vanguard Rearguard Circle can last 1 to call a card with the same card name as your rearguard other than itself, and remove that unit at the end of turn. Now, I see some lists that, you know, recommend you play it 3 at 4, and I don't recommend 3 or 4. Because this deck is actually quite counterblast heavy. If you know, unless you high roll and you stream roll your opponent turn 3, then it's GG anyways. But Oboro card is great for your early offense or help you patch up your card advantage problem in your endgame. But overall, you won't see use of this card more than once or twice a game, and that's why I think 2 is a comfortable number. You'll see it often enough to use it once, but you probably don't want to use it more than once. And I'll explain why later on as well. Next up, for your primary grade 2 target, you have obviously the grade 2 Magatsu. It does the same thing as grade 1. When the grade 3 rides on top of it, you get to KAGE BUNSHIN Shadow Clone 2 copies of the grade 3 out onto the field. This time they're 10k, so they can build a 20k column by itself, or be 2 10k boosters or 2 10k attackers. And at the end of the turn, put one to your hand and remove the other one. And you might think, oh well, adding a grade 3 to my hand doesn't seem that good. But the grade 3 also has a skill, a Persona Blast skill, so that extra grade 3 does come in handy. Next up, we're playing 4 12Ks and 5 10Ks, and I'll explain myself why. The 12K is basically like if you are on the grade 2 or the grade 3 Magatsu, it gets it keeps 12K. If it's not, then it's -5K, and the 10Ks are just 10K vanillas. And the reason why is because we're playing stands. So we're playing stands. We want those high raw stats, and the 12K attacking by itself, restanding as 17 plus booster, hitting 20, 23 at minimum in this deck if you have a 6k booster, and hitting upwards to, you know, 22, 27 if you have that Magatsu booster is really, really good. And even on that turn 2 turn, being able to hit 12 plus 9 if you get that 9k booster, 21 or a 20k column, definitely helps you with that early aggression, even if you go second. And this is why you want, like, I personally prefer playing the 12k. Like, if you're going first anyways, your aggression is going to be really strong anyways, and the 12k does help you with that. But if you're going second, you know, if you're just playing 10k vanillas or you're playing the 9k, your aggression kind of falters a little bit, and the 12k lets you hit those magic numbers with that booster, and definitely is very valuable. And this is also why we're playing more AKs and because you do want to hit those 20k numbers, 21k numbers on your second turn. And that way you can still punish your opponent. Even if your opponent rides a 10k Vanguard, you can still hit over those numbers, and this is why I like that 12k. If you've seen a playtesting video, you know at times you might ride this and it becomes a 7k Vanguard and it sucks. But more times than not, you know, if you get the ride chain going, you will steamroll, and this is kind of the main idea of the deck. If you don't, then you're playing more defensively anyways, and you can patch up your defense with Shirayuki, which we will get to. And you will have 10k shields onto the rearguard circles anyways, if you really do want that. So yeah, we are not playing the 9k, that snipes the back row. Even though it might be a decent idea, it might be a good idea in a 9-draw deck. A lot of people play it at 1, which I find a little bit questionable. I think it's a tech slot anyway, so it's fine at 1, but if you do want to use that skill consistently, you do want to play it at, you know, 3 or 4. It's a Vanguard only skill as well, so that's something to consider. You know, most of the time I tried it, it's a 9k vanilla on the rearguard circle, because you do have, you know, this card as a primary ride target, and if not, you still have a bunch of 10ks that you prefer riding over anyways. So that 9k didn't really see a lot play, and that's why it's not in the, they didn't really make the cut, in my opinion. Let's go to the grade 3s. We have Magatsu, obviously. Its skill is Limit Break 4, Candle Mask 2 to get +3, and call out 2 copies of itself at the end, and they get boost at the end of turn, remove 1, add 1 to your hand. Again, it supplements the second skill. Vanguard, when this attacks, Candle Mask 1 Persona Blast to call a Magatsu, either grade 1, grade 2, or grade 3, or the grade 0 if it somehow bounces to your hand, and then you can call it out, so it gives you that 4th attack if you do want that option. And then lastly, if the grade 2 is in your soul, it gets +1, as Ride Chain does. So you get that extra copy from drawing into it because you play it at 4, because consistency is good. You get that copy when you use the Limit Break, and you get that copy when you go over the notions of going through the Ride Chain. So using that Persona Blast isn't that uncommon. I do feel like it comes in handy. And if you notice, you know, even just this card by itself, if you do want to, you know, use up all the skills, or one skill uses Counter Blast 2, one skill uses Counter Blast 1. And I do think that these skills overall are more valuable than an Oboro card, and comes into play more often than using the Oboro card skill. And that's why I don't really play 3 or 4 of Oboro card in that sense. In addition, another card uses Counter Blast 2, and that's Shirayuki. Shirayuki's skill is Limit Break 4. When this is attacked, you can Counter Blast 1 Persona Blast to have the attacking unit get -20k until the end of battle. So this is really interesting because outside of Murakumo, you don't really have a clan that guards from hand, outside of Sentinels, of course. So this is a really nice option, and gives you that defensive style that Murakumo might want to lean into if you miss the Ride Chain. And in addition, when placed, you can Counter Blast 2, call a copy of itself at the end of the turn, add it to your hand. And that way you have that fuel to guarantee that at least you will be able to activate that Limit Break at least once, without needing to draw into it. And yeah, this card needs Counter Blast 2, this card probably you want to Counter Blast 2 with it, and then maybe Counter Blast 1 sometimes. So rarely you will be using the upper row card, and even if you do, it's generally on your turn 2, and really early game or really late game, and that's why I don't really like playing it at too high numbers, because it sometimes doesn't, the 6k body doesn't really help you hit those numbers that you want, that the 8k or 7k does. And since I rarely find myself using the skill, you know, having too many of that in my hand doesn't really help. And lastly, we play 4 Zanbaku. Zanbaku's skill is at the start of your opponent's ride phase, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, your opponent must discard a card basically to enter the ride phase. If not, they skip the ride phase. This card, rarely ride into it. It's like your 3rd backup ride option. Your first priority is Magatsu, 2nd is Shirayuki, and 3rd is Zanbaku. But Zanbaku's, you know, I guess it's still an option. It's still an option, and it definitely does deter your opponent from their big red turn. It makes them less, gives them less options on their turn, especially in that Eradicator matchup. When if your opponent goes up to Descendants, sometimes their cards in hand is low, and Zanbaku definitely does shut down some plays sometimes. But generally, you don't really want to ride into this. It's just a 3rd option, just a backup option, and primarily we're just using this because it's an 11k unit. It can work on the Vanguard circle, rearguard circle, and mostly you use it as a beater. And lastly, we play Musashi. Twin Swordsman Musashi. Its skill is Vanguard rearguard during your turn. If you have more rearguards than your opponent, this gets +3. So it's a 12k beater, and the reason why is because we are playing stands. Again, similar to the reason why we're playing the 12k grade 2. You want units in the front row that are able to hit themselves, so when you restand them, you still have that booster to help you hit those numbers. 12 and 10, 22k column hits basically anything your opponent has. Even if your opponent took 1 damage that turn, even if they hit a defensive, you will still be able to hit over that. And so Musashi is definitely an interesting choice. Again, this is that 1-off slot. You can play the 10+3. You can play other 11Ks, even though I personally found Musashi, you know, just a decent pick. It's not really good, but it's not bad at all. And it's just there because it hits numbers, and that's mostly what that 1 tech slot is for. Overall, I think the last interesting thing to discuss is the trigger lineup. Most common lists play 9 draws, and that's because, well, you want that consistency. You want to be able to play out your hand in the early game and then recuperate that resource in the late game, and then maintain that card advantage and build up your end game. I found that the 9 draw variant didn't really suit my playstyle. I found that the ride chain, you really want to take advantage of that steam and go full steam ahead and just push, hit those numbers, and that's what the 12Ks and the 12Ks and the 8Ks and all the numbers really match up. This deck is one of the rare decks that actually can generate the board presence and generate the numbers, build those numbers that you really want in order to maximize the value of stand triggers with the 9K boosters or the 10K boosters. And I definitely think that the stand triggers really synergize with this deck. In terms of the placements, I put the draw trigger in the Magatsu and the stand trigger in the Shirayuki. The logic behind that, even though it really rarely comes into play, is if you do end up riding Shirayuki, you do want to draw into more Shirayukis or other units. You don't really have an option to generate card advantage, and so you do want to see more draw triggers. So if you did draw into the Shirayuki, it means that, you know, there's 1 more draw trigger rather than stand trigger in your deck. And if you do get into your Magatsu, it means that you're probably on the right path. You have the right shade down. You have everything set up. And so instead of seeing draw triggers, you want to see more stand triggers. And that's just kind of like a really simplistic approach to it. I don't know if you agree or disagree. In the playtest stream, I had them reversed, and I personally found this approach to work much better. And yeah, I guess without further ado, oh, one last thing. Mandala Lord. Why do I not play Mandala Lord? Now, I tried Mandala Lord, but I really didn't like it, again, because if you are going to play Mandala Lord, you're probably going to play the 9 draw variant. I don't recommend you play the 9 stand variant, since you have 3 units that want to Persona Blast. Drawing into copies of that is not bad. But the problem with Mandala Lord is, you know, it's a tertiary ride target, right? Again, you want to go Magatsu, you want to go Shirayuki, and then you want to go Zanbaku or Mandala Lord. Mandala Lord is a viable option, but I don't think it brings enough to the table to warrant it. You don't really want to ride it, and that's the problem with this card. You know, its support is neat. Stealth Dragon Curse Breath is a neat card on hit check top 5 for Mandala Lord, but the question is, do you want to hit, you know, require on hit, check top 5 and add a trigger to your hand? You know, yes, the skill is decent, but it's not good enough to warrant it, and that's why I don't really like it. But yeah, I think if you want to play that card, play 9 draws, and then I think, you know, I still don't think it's worth playing cards like this. But yeah, I think if you do want to play Mandala Lord, I think it's a viable option, just not to my taste. And I think it really depends on the trigger lineup you want, you know, how you want to play the game. And personally, I just found Zanbaku work better. So let's just go straight into a ranked fight and see how this goes. So I've been playing this deck quite a lot. I really enjoy the options that it has. Of course, it's not as technical as the other decks. It's much more beatdown. So if you are interested in the beatdown style decks, this deck is definitely one of the choices for you. In the stream, I did play the 8 10K variant and the 1 12K and stuff like that, and I just found the 12K more flexible with the stand triggers, and I think hitting those numbers and having a better defensive shield intercept in the front row is definitely nice. For your mulligan, you do want a mulligan hard for the grade 1 or grade 2. Unfortunately, I think we might be playing against the VP farmer, which is not nice. So I might have to actually edit this video. But let's just go through it. Maybe they're playing proper Galahad, and yeah. So even if you miss the grade 1, I still think you should keep the grade 2 in your hand, because even going from grade 2 to grade 3, getting that 2 grade 3 10k boosters or attackers, that flexible unit still is big enough and can still maintain that aggression that you really do want. You might not have as explosive of a turn 2, but I still do think that it'll still be strong enough. Okay, unfortunately, we're gonna be playing against a VP former, so I think I'll cut right off of this, and we will jump into the next fight next. And we are back. So we just cleaned up that VP former. Let's go straight into another fight. So yeah, let me know down below what you feel about Murakumo after the event. You know, have you had the chance to play this deck? If you have, you know, what other recommendations do you have after seeing this video? I think it's definitely very helpful. You know, I have played a bit of this deck, but still, it's always nice to get more advice and some perspectives and things, because you never know what you missed. And definitely have learned a lot from everyone who commented down below as well. So as explained before, I think it's still valuable to keep the grade 2 and grade 3 if you have the grade 2 if you have it, because even if you just go from the grade 2 to grade 3, you will still be able to generate the shadow clones, and 2 10k boosters or 2 10k attackers or a 20k column on your ride grade 3 turn is still definitely very valuable, and you're still generating a +1 by getting that extra copy of Magatsu Storm to your hand that you can then use to Persona Blast later on if you want to. Opponent missed the right chain as well, which is nice, because then that way we will be playing a little nice mirror. But yeah, okay, let's see. Oh, so we did get the right chain, fortunately. Let's just go straight into it. Alright, so let's see. Let's get the grade 2, because we already have the grade 3 in our hand. There's no reason to reduce our trigger count. And there's no reason to get that extra copy so early on. What do we want to do here? We want to call out a unit so we don't overdraw. Do we want to put it behind the Vanguard or on the rearguard circle? Let's put it behind the rearguard circle. For the starter, generally, as a 5k booster, I put it on the corners. Because if you do want that boost to hit over numbers, when you go over the ride chain, you will hit those, you will get those 10k boosters anyways, or 9k 10k boosters anyways. And if you miss it, if you go Shirayuki or Zanbaku, most of the time, you know, rearguard to rearguard, rearguard to rearguard, Vanguard to Vanguard, and your Vanguard attack will be the first to your opponent's Vanguard, so you don't really have to hesitate that much with that booster. I mean, there are plays sometimes when you don't have enough boosters to take advantage of the stands if you miss the right chain, but I think that's something to consider, but I'd much rather leave that space behind the Vanguard to help you get other boosters to help you hit over numbers, and having that extra slot for a Boro card later on definitely does help as well. So your opponent did keep that grade 2, rode into the grade 2, maintain that power base for the 12k, so that's nice. We did draw into one of these. Let's just ride it. And we will build up our 19k columns. So our opponent's also playing stands, which is nice. I definitely do think that stands is the way to go. Let's see, where do I want to put this? Rearguard to rearguard. So here, even if our opponent hits a trigger, we are still in the 19k column. And if not, which I hope, then if we hit a stand here, we will still have a chance to hit, as long as our opponent doesn't hit another trigger, a trigger here. Which, nice, okay, it works. And then we hit for 23. So here's a misplay, right? Did you catch that? The 10k should have went to the 9k column, because 19k hits our opponent's 9k Vanguard better. So, I guess. So this is one of the situations where you can blame triggers, but definitely you can play better. And in hindsight, I should have played better. And so yeah, I mean, I guess take that as a lesson. Don't misplay like Entropy. Remember to build your columns properly. Then take advantage of the 9K and 10K boosters, and you know, that way you won't get triggered by triggers as much, and you can actually play around them sometimes. Here, our opponent should have put the 5K booster in front because the 8K can boost anyways, and that means that they can maintain that 8K booster. They can stick that onto the board for longer, and the 8K is more valuable than 5K. You know, I'd say like, every single time in this deck, since you can't bounce that 5K to use as multi-attack option at the moment. So yeah, I think that's definitely a small misplay here, and something to consider. It's gonna go straight to the right chain. There's nothing wrong with this. We're just gonna build up our numbers. Our Vanguard's a 21K column, so even if our opponent hits a trigger, we will still hit them. And then we can still Persona Blast, so that's nice. So we're gonna wombo combo right now. Alright, our opponent hit a trigger, so they're 21, but luckily we can still hit. And we made another misplay here. We should have put the 10K in front, and that way we can Persona Blast, call on top of that unit that would disappear anyways, and we can still ping for something. I guess to spin it positively, here we're saving our Counter Blast, we're saving our Persona Blast for a later turn, but it doesn't really matter, we still won. But I guess overall, this video is gonna make a mockery of me. You don't. Okay, so here's the moral of the story, I guess, for this video is sometimes you don't catch your misplays, and it's important to review your plays and review your games. Make sure that you aren't playing. You can play the best of your abilities. Just in one game, even though we won, you know, it's nice to win and all, but you know, there are circumstances that could have changed the tide of the game because we misplayed, right? With the trigger, if our opponent had a trigger, we wouldn't put them to 4, and that would make our you know, this turn we wouldn't kill our opponent. So that's something to consider. If our opponent had a PG, we wouldn't be able to ping one extra unit out of our opponent's board, and that definitely does hurt our defense on the next turn. So you know, our opponent could wombo combo us and put us to 5 or 6 even. So that's just some things to consider. I mean, overall, you can see that this deck works pretty well. If you played better than Entropy, this deck would run even smoother, but this is all I got. But yeah, so this is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe, and you know, like the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know down below what you think about the list, what you think about the clan, what do you think about, you know, the trigger lineup. Well, do you agree, do you disagree? What do you think about the play? I think overall this deck is pretty solid. I played quite a bit. Generally speaking, I don't want to upload these deck overviews, you know, day one or whatever. Like, I think it's nice and all to have that content out there, but I do want to assure everyone that you know, you're playtesting. I'm playtesting the deck. I have the experience. I've considered multiple perspectives and options, and you know, I can fully explain my plays and the way the deck is built before I publish anything. So that's just my approach to things. You know, I see value in having it out there because people do want that resource as soon as possible. But this is just a more cohesive guide, and I hope you all enjoyed. Stay safe, and hope you look forward to the next video. All right, see y'all next time. Bye.